Professor Jones, you've had a background in plant breeding and plant physiology. How long have you been in the field of remote sensing, and what tipped you into that field, given your background?
Yes, I've been in the field of remote sensing about 15 years. I became interested in this because of my interest in drought and drought tolerance. And in those days, we had a wonderful tool for measuring plant stress, the thermal camera. And that just started becoming affordable at that stage. And so that's when I became doing it in real.
So your interest first started in using the remote sensing, the drought tolerance for breeding, and has it tipped into broader use through England and Europe for the general farming population?
Well, actually, the original use was not for breeding, but was for irrigation scheduling, and there is substantial interest in using this, and in some parts of certainly the US, they're now using thermal methods for irrigation scheduling, and it's being developed and tested in Australia also.
So that's irrigation scheduling on cereal crops or lucerne or
primarily it's been
horticultural?
on horticultural crops, vineyards particularly. That's where there's been the greatest uptake.
And there's a possibility for irrigation broadacre crops such as lucerne?
Wherever there is irrigation requirement, thermal sensing is a tool for irrigation scheduling.
Okay, in your presentation today, there are a range of different processes that you outlined. Which ones are sort of currently being used most effectively by the growers, or are they all on the cusp of the uptake in the broader community?
I mean, some things like satellite imaging for weather forecasting are already widely used. So that's an existing technology which is now widely used. As far as the actual farmers and growers are concerned, remote sensing is becoming a practical tool for current use, both at the smallest scale, tractor-mounted sensors for nitrogen sensing, and there are certainly in Spain and in other countries in Europe some interest in airborne sensing, and farmers are currently using those both for irrigation scheduling and for other crop management activities.
In Australia, when the first controlled traffic work came through and mapping sensors on harvesters, etc., there seemed to be a real black hole almost with linking varying types of seeding machines to controlled traffic, to the data that they were getting. Is that a key limiting factor, do you think, with the various types of remote sensing that you're talking about? Does somebody need to develop the platform that links all these bits of information before it really takes off?
Yeah, I think the real challenge to make this a universally used technology is this platform to handle the data, make it easily accessible and usable. And it's got to be user-friendly. Now, the question remains as to whether it will ever become a farmer-led activity who'll do it himself, or he'll rely on a consultant organisation to do the data handling. And that I'm open. I don't know at the moment.
I guess if there's a fit for consultants to be able to handle that, they'll find a way into the market, and the EM38 mapping and that sort of thing's been largely handled in Western Australia, at least, by a couple of key consultancy groups. So given the uptake of that and the ability of a consultant to jump on board and provide a service, hopefully we'd be able to get them to do some of these more in-depth type work.
Yeah, I think that's right, and certainly in the UK the same thing's happening. There are consultancy organisations that will provide this sort of service, and they're being increasingly used now by the farmers.
I guess the proof in the pudding is the ability to prove the value. A couple of the speakers earlier, one of them mentioned that he's been able to save $20 to $30 in cost and increase his overall profit by $50 a hectare. Have we taken any, or is there somebody working on in Australia to link these things together to start to throw the numbers out to farmers that again might tip them over the line to get this higher level?
Yes, I'm afraid I don't know the West Australian or the Australian field as well as I would need to answer that question, but I am sure from what I do know that there are people who are currently gearing up to provide this sort of service.
With the controlled traffic type system, from the time that all the new machines were capable to the time that there was a rapid uptake or a widespread uptake in the Australian market was probably 10 to 12 years. How does that relate to what happened in the European market, and how do you see the timeline for uptake of some of these sensing type systems compared to that?
I think it's the European markets again, it's taken a similar sort of period, but I think probably in Europe we're now more universally adopting this sort of technology. Most of the larger growers will have this sort of technology now built into their systems.